Expecting it to be a train wreck, and I'm okay with that. Well, hello there. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Ashley. Today we will be discussing my April TBR. These are the books that I would love to get to in the month of April. This is a wish list. Let's just point out the fact that I don't follow TBRs very well because I'm a mood reader. But these are the books that will possibly be coming in for me at the library, which I might possibly be in the mood to read. We'll see. We'll find out. Okay, so let's start with the books for readathons. The first book is The Secret Garden by Frances Hodgson Burnett. Mrs. Burnett. We'll go with that. This is the book pick for A Touch of Whimsy, which is the book club hosted by Alexandra Rosalind. That's the channel name, but she goes by Lexi. Right here. I have never read this book before. It is a children's classic. I own a copy. I've owned a copy for a really long time, and I've just never been interested in reading it. But everybody speaks really highly of this book, so I want to hopefully finish this for this read along because I'm really excited for it. Okay, so this story follows Mary Lennox. She goes to India with her parents because her father's in the military, and then both her parents die in a pandemic. I mean, I don't want to say that's the story of a lot of people's lives, but that is a story going on, a narrative going on in our world right now. And anyway, she returns back to her native country of England to live with an uncle that she has never met. Mary really struggles with the adjustment in temperature to the people involved. She throws a lot of temper tantrums because she can't figure out what to do with herself, and things start to get a little weird in this manor. Like, for instance, she hears someone weeping in the manor, and the servants pretend to not know what the heck she's talking about. There's also a mysterious garden that is kept locked at all times, and Mary tries to figure out how to navigate her own trauma, as well as the oddness of the new home that she's currently living in. I also was delighted to learn that this book was written by a woman. I, for some reason, thought Frances was a man. Sorry, Frances, you're dead, but sorry. And I don't know why that makes me happy that there's this woman writing children's fiction in the Victorian era. Anyway, there's just not a lot of classics written by women in the Victorian era, so I love the fact that I can add another person to my list. So excited to dig into this one. And the next book for the read-along that I want to read is Sense and Sensibility, and this is for the Affectionately Austen Book Club, hosted by Darling Desi, right here. This live show will be held at the end of, May. I'm thinking ahead because it's still March when I'm filming this. So May, 2 months. And I am so excited to read Sense and Sensibility again. This is by far my favorite book by Jane Austen, and I'm so excited to be reading it with people and being able to discuss it with people. This story follows two sisters who are forced to leave their house when their father dies and their brother inherits the estate and kicks them out. Both sisters attempt to find good matches in an attempt to be able to increase their fortunes, and because it's Jane Austen, things go horribly awry. We have two sisters. We have Eleanor Dashwood and Marianne Dashwood, and Eleanor is extremely sensitive to social conventions. She's very aware of how she's being perceived. She's very sensible. And that leads her to conceal all of her emotions and her feelings inside of herself, and to not use her family as a sounding board for the things that are going on in her life. Her sister Marianne, on the other hand, is a wear your heart on your sleeve. She's the kind of girl who twists her angles while she's chasing her daydreams and the rainbows down a meadow. Marianne is very vivacious, but this leaves her open to a lot of innuendos and gossip because she tends to not care what people think. And while she's able to talk with her friends and family about all the emotions that are going on inside of her, she is not a good sounding board for other people trying to bring emotions to her. So it is a very selfish relationship on her part. And this is the story of the two sisters learning that sense and sensibility both need to be together in order to have good relationships. It's just so lovely. I love the sisterly relationship. I love the process of them finding boys to be in love with. I mean, I kind of just described the plot as a very character-driven plot, and it is because it's Jane Austen. But all the sorrow and all the happiness that is encountered in this book, it's just so lovely, and I'm excited to read it and to listen to it and to just all things Sensibility. Alright, so I have a lot of books that I want to read just for fun this month. So the first one is From Blood and Ash by Jennifer L. Armentrout. This has been on my holds list for a really long time. I have heard so many mixed reviews about this, and I'm excited to see what I think. This book follows Poppy, who has been chosen as the Maiden, which is a title. The Maiden lives a very solitary life. She's not supposed to talk to people. People aren't supposed to talk to her. She's not supposed to be looked at. She's not supposed to be touched. And then she gets a new guard, and all of a sudden Poppy is not sure that she wants to continue to be the Maiden, but also the fate of her country depends on her being able to usher them into a new era. This sounds like a fantastic love story. It gives me a lot of Warbreaker vibes by Brandon Sanderson, which I absolutely adored, so I'm hoping it's kind of along those lines. I've heard that if you go into this expecting this to be a fantasy novel, you're pretty disappointed, but if you go into this expecting that it's a romance novel with a little bit of fantasy world in, then you like it a lot more. So I'm going in expecting a romance. I'm excited about the fact that it's a romance, and I hope it's lovely. I hope it's just a wonderful journey. I think the third book is coming out soon, so I'm definitely jumping on this a little bit late, but that's okay with me. I've heard that the second book turns into a love triangle, which is my least favorite romance trope. I despise love triangles, so I guess we'll see. We'll see how this turns out. Next, we have A Deadly Education by Naomi Novik. I have heard, again, mixed reviews on this, and I think it kind of depends on what... I think it will depend mostly on how the character development goes. This book is kind of a mashup between The Hunger Games and Harry Potter. It involves a school called the Scholomance, where students are essentially trapped in the school. There's no teachers, there's no homework. The only goal is for them to survive until graduation and defeat the monsters that are just kind of roaming through the halls, which kind of doesn't really sound like a school. It sounds more like a prison where they keep children who have the potential, who have magical potential. And specifically we follow Elle, who is our main character, and she has a somewhat taboo form of magic that she can perform, and it's very powerful, but it's also extremely deadly, and she struggles to make friends or allies with the other students in the school. I think this is a fantastic plot. I'm really interested in this plot line, and I think it will depend more on how what themes are picked and how those themes are addressed, because I think there's a lot of potential here to study themes on isolation and loneliness, and if that's done really well, this could be a beautiful novel. Next, we have Midnight Sun by Stephanie Meyers. I'm going to attempt to read this for the third time, I think. I don't know where I stand on Twilight. It's definitely a pop culture thing to be in love with Twilight, but also to hate Twilight. Like, you're cool if you hate Twilight, and like, you're not cool if you like Twilight, and I'm kind of mostly in the middle. There are things about Twilight that I like, and then there are a lot of things about Twilight that I don't like. Anyway, let me explain what the story is about. This is the first book in the Twilight series written from the vampire's perspective. I've heard that if you read it as a thriller novel or a serial killer-ish stalker perspective, that it's actually quite interesting. Maybe that will help. I definitely am not a big fan of insta-love tropes, and that's Stephanie Meyers' caveat. This last month I read The Chemist by Stephanie Meyers, and I really enjoyed it, and this is her most recent work. And I haven't reread Twilight for 4 or 5 years, so I think that will really help because it will be the Twilight story, but it's not like I've recently read Twilight, because a lot of people didn't read Midnight Sun all the way through simply because they read it and they were like, this is Twilight, and I don't need this. So I'm going to attempt to read it again. I've listened to the first chapter twice and went, I am not in the mood for this, but I'm kind of in the mood to listen to Twilight, so I figured I would do Midnight Sun instead. I don't know. I don't know what my feelings are on this subject, so I'm kind of hoping to figure that out. I'm not expecting this to be a 5-star read by any means. I'm expecting it to be a train wreck, and I'm okay with that. And the last book that's supposed to come in for me at the library fairly soon is A Promised Land by Barack Obama. This is part 1 in the memoirs that he is releasing about his time in the presidency. I'm very excited for this novel. I grew up in a very highly conservative state. The newspapers that I read and the news that I consume is highly conservative. And so I grew up in a bubble, should we call it a political bubble, where everything that I heard about Obama was very negative when he was president. And then on a whim, I read Becoming by Michelle Obama, and it was maybe the first time that I'd ever heard people talk about Obama in positive lights. Obviously, Michelle Obama is very biased, right? Like, she's married to the man. But for me, it was a realization that, oh, this is a person, and like, I don't know, there was just a huge understanding of my own lack of knowledge on political subjects. And so since that moment, I've been trying really hard coming into the political sphere and trying to figure out what my own opinions are to make sure that I am doing all of the thinking for myself, meaning I don't want to be in a news bubble or a news vacuum where all I consume is one type of news. Like, I want different opinions by a lot of people, and then I want to figure out what that opinion is myself. I don't like the idea of listening to the same thing, the same opinion from all people and not listening to the other side, because what if they have like a legitimately good argument? Like, I don't want to be wrong. Like, I want to come to a conclusion and know why I stand for that conclusion. I don't want little sound bites to tell me how to think. That strikes me as very uncomfortable, strikes me as very 1984, even though I haven't read that book yet. I just definitely feel like you should come up with your own political opinions, and for me, this is part of that process. So I plan to read any books that Barack Obama has written himself. I also plan to read positive reviews or not positive, but people who have his same political leanings, what they wrote about him, and then people who had different political leanings, what they wrote about him. And then maybe with all that combined, I will be able to figure out a middle road. I don't think political figures are all evil or all good. Like, they make mistakes, they're people, they're human, and we as humans really struggle with the idea of humans being humans, if that makes any sense. We struggle with the idea that people are not perfect all the time. We put people on pedestals, la 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 la. Anyway, this is a very long-winded way of saying I lived through this period of time, and I'm excited to relook at President Barack Obama, I don't think he's not president anymore, at Barack Obama's time in the presidency from a liberal perspective, because I've only ever viewed it from a very conservative perspective. All right, and lastly, I have my current reads, books that are pulling over from the month of March. Now, I'm filming this a tad bit early to get ahead on filming and editing, so I don't currently know where I'm at in these books, so I will leave some text to let you know where I'm at. Book number 1. Robinson Crusoe, again, always and forever. No, just kidding. I have read a little bit more in this book, and he's finally shipwrecked. And after reading Shakespeare, this book got remarkably easier to work through and to finish. I am starting to enjoy it. The first 100 pages were very difficult, but now that I have a hang on the writing style, kind of the flow of the novel, what to expect, I think that I'm really ready, but I also think I need to reread those 100 pages. So I've checked it out from the library, and I'm going to listen to it again, just because that was super helpful when I did Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Reading it, like the struggle of trying to figure out what the language and the words were saying, meant that I kind of lost the story and the narrative. And then when I listened to it again, I found the narrative, and I went, oh, that's what it was saying. I got the scope of the story altogether. So being able to see the text multiple times from multiple angles with different intonations from other people reading it, super helpful. So I'm excited to continue this one. I don't have any deadline for when I'm going to finish this book. It's just slow going, and that's okay. I'm enjoying reading it slowly. I'm enjoying reading it now, and that's helpful. Next, we have Rhythm of War by Brandon Sanderson. I'm currently this page or this percent in. I have been both reading this and then listening to the audiobook, and I've been taking it really slow, partially because it's a wicked long book, and partially because I just am enjoying this story. I really love the representation of mental health that is going on in these stories, and I love where this story is going. And I feel like the second I finish this book, I'm going to restart the series over again and start reading it again slowly, just because I want to watch again where all the character growth is, because now I know where the character growth is going, and so book 1 will be way more interesting to go through. I love this series so much. It means so much to me. So to give a quick summary, because this is book 4, so no spoilers, but this story follows 2 warring tribes, the Alethi and the Parshendi. The Parshendi have killed the Alethi king, and the Alethi have gone to war against the Parshendi as a form of revenge. Both groups have kind of forgotten the original purpose of the war, and they've kind of started infighting a little bit, and we focus mostly on the Alethi in these stories. And we follow several characters, and odd things start happening to them, and they realize that they might possibly need to form an order of knights in order to prevent an apocalypse. That's a very brief summary. It's beautiful. You should read it. And then lastly, we have The Lost Symbol by Dan Brown. I really intended to not pick up another thriller for a while, and I couldn't do it because I'm just in the mood to read thrillers. So this is the one that I picked up. This is the 3rd book in the Da Vinci Code series, and this follows Robert Langdon, who is a Harvard professor. He is a professor of symbologist, I think is the correct term. And his deeply beloved mentor has been brutally kidnapped, and his kidnapper his kidnapper says that he will give him back if Robert will help him discover a secret symbol that the Masons left behind in Washington, D.C. This book is filled with myth and lore and legends all about the Freemasons, which I find super interesting. This is a subject I definitely need to do a little bit more research on because I find it really interesting, which I just said. But I don't know, one of my favorite things about thriller novels is that for me, I love the ability to sit down and read and then all of a sudden look up and realize hours have passed and I'm hundreds of pages in and I just want to keep reading. Like, these are novels that I truly get lost in, and I love that because a lot of times reading sometimes is a little bit of a drudgery, and with thriller novels there's no drudgery to it anymore. So that is my summary. And like I said, I'll just do what I want. So I could end up reading all of these. I could end up reading none of these. The only one that I'm for sure I'm going to go down saying that I'll continue reading is Rhythm of War, but I may not finish it in the month of April. So cheers. I think you need a cup for that. Cheers. I will talk to you all in another video and in the comments below. Okay, bye.